$30, 20 sessions. One 10-year-old who wants to actually make something, not just tear open a kit and toss it in a drawer by dinner. That's the real math behind today's question. And the answer to what blows the budget first is not what you'd think. Hey Profiteer, Eric here. Welcome back to Real Money Stories. Today's post comes from the povertyfinance subreddit, and it's about stretching a tiny hobby budget for a kid without it turning into wasted money and a frustrated afternoon. This one's not about debt or a windfall. It's about a parent trying to get the most out of $30, which honestly might be the more universal question. Let me read it to you in their own words. This month's craft budget is $30, and I'm trying to make it last with a 10-year-old instead of spending it on 5 little activities that are finished in one afternoon. Ideally, the project could be split into roughly 20 short sessions and still feel like real making, not preschool busy work. The 3 options I'm looking at are building from cardboard and leftover paper, using secondhand craft materials, or putting most of the budget into one small miniature style project that can be worked on gradually. The part I'm unsure about is how much adult help the last option usually needs, especially with cutting, glue, tiny pieces, or anything that needs careful alignment. I'm less interested in the cheapest upfront option than the one that gives the most actual making time. Parents who craft with kids around this age, what usually blows the budget first, materials, tools, or projects that turn out too frustrating to finish? Okay, first thing I want to say reading this is a genuinely smart question, and I don't say that lightly. Most people, kids included, think about a budget in terms of what it buys up front. This parent is thinking about what it buys per hour of engagement. That's a completely different and much more useful way to look at money. I've been writing about money for over a decade, and the pattern I keep seeing, whether it's a grocery budget or a hobby budget, is that people optimize for the price tag instead of the cost per use. This post is that principle in miniature, literally given one of the options on the table. So here's what I'd probably do in this parent's shoes and why. First, the cost per session rule. Instead of asking, what can I buy for $30? Ask, what does each session cost? $30 over 20 sessions is $1.50 a session. That's the number that actually matters, not the sticker price of any one material. And here's why that reframe changes the decision. The 5 little activities option might look cheap individually, $3 or $4 each, but if each one dies in a single afternoon, you're paying full price for one session, not 20. The real cost per session on that path is actually higher, not lower. Cheap and short-lived is often the most expensive option in disguise. The next step is simple before buying anything. Divide the price by the realistic number of sessions it'll survive, not the optimistic number you're hoping to hit. Second, what I'd call the sinking fund approach, and this is a term borrowed straight from personal finance. A sinking fund is money set aside gradually toward one specific future goal instead of spread across a bunch of small purchases. That's exactly the miniature project option that the original poster mentioned. And the mechanism is the same whether it's a vacation fund or a dollhouse kit. Concentrating a budget toward one meaningful outcome almost always produces more satisfaction, and in this case more actual making time, than diffusing it across 5 disconnected purchases. If I had to bet on which option gives 20 real sessions instead of 4, it's this one. Now, here's where it gets complicated because the original poster asked a really good follow-up question. How much adult help does that option need? And that's actually the hidden cost nobody puts on the price tag. This is the third framework, and I'd call it the frustration tax. Materials cost money, frustration costs the whole project, a miniature build with tiny pieces, precise glue lines, and careful alignment can absolutely blow past a 10-year-old's fine motor patience, and when that happens, you don't just lose that session, you often lose the kid's willingness to touch the project again. That's a sunk cost in the truest sense, money spent that produces 0 future sessions. The why here matters. The goal isn't the cheapest materials, it's the highest probability of finishing. So the practical fix is cutting the fussiest pieces yourself ahead of time, saving the kid, lead work for the parts that don't require adult level precision, cutting versus assembling, painting versus aligning, and letting the miniature project be something you both build together in stages rather than something you hand over and hope survives 20 sessions of an unsupervised glue stick. Fourth, and this ties the other 2 options together, I'd call it modular sourcing. Cardboard, leftover paper, and secondhand craft materials aren't really competing options against the miniature build. They're the raw ingredients that stretch it further. Buying a small core kit for the structure, then filling in texture, color, and detail with free cardboard and secondhand scraps gets you the real making feeling of the miniature project without spending the full $30 on materials alone. That leaves room in the budget for the parts that are worth paying for: pre-cut pieces, better glue, small tools that reduce frustration, which loops right back to protecting against that frustration tax. Just a friendly reminder that this episode is intended for entertainment and education purposes only and should not be considered financial or legal advice. If you're working through a budget decision like this one, especially with a kid involved, it's worth talking through the specifics with a qualified financial advisor or, honestly, an experienced crafting parent who's done this before. So what usually blows the budget first? Based on everything above, my honest answer is projects that don't get finished. Not materials, not tools. An unfinished project is $30 spent on 0 sessions of joy. The specific question here was about a 10-year-old and a $30 craft budget, but the principle underneath it, cost per use beats cost upfront, and finishing something beats owning the cheapest version of it, applies whether you're budgeting $30 or $3,000. If you found this helpful, share it with someone dealing with the same thing. Until next time, stay profitable.